Hi, everyone. It's Sarah from the Support Worker Store. Today, I've got Belinda. Welcome to the podcast, Belinda.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
So, I'm just going to get straight into it because can you share a little bit about yourself and what led you into the disability sector?
Mm. Sure. Basically, I fell into the disability sector. I was 19 and wanted to do youth work, but I was too young. And they were doing a certificate in disability. I thought, you know what? I'll study for a year leading up to youth work, and I will do that to fill in some time. And what I didn't realise was how I fell in love with the sector, and how I ended up doing Cert 4 and placements and got a job. I first applied for a job in Pentridge, to be honest, working with sex offenders, and ended up working at Statewide Forensic instead because I was too young at 19 to go into Pentridge, funny enough. And then also got a job within group work. And I went on to do a bit of study, further study in youth work, and decided I didn't like young people that much, and ended up staying in disability. And I'm here 30 years later, I guess. Once a support worker, always a support worker, I have to say. And I guess I climbed my way up in the fact that I was given other jobs and recognised as a leader, and then started including you 10 years ago.
So,
Yes, that's
if
a
I
brief.
draw myself back to when you did your first year of studying to be a disability support worker, was there a certain person that you worked with? You just kind of clicked and thought, "Oh, I have arrived. This is exactly where I'm meant to be."
Do you know, it fascinated me. What really got me in the Cert 4 was we were deinstitutionalising people out of institutions, and I was mind blown by that. What do you mean that people were put in institutions, and we're now going to teach people how to live in the community? And, I just, the theory behind it just fitted in with my social justice human rights lens, and then meeting people with a disability and going on placement and just loving what I was doing. Yeah, it felt right. It also felt very wrong going into Kew cottages and seeing people, being treated less than human. That was really confronting, and I think that solidified for me that something had to change and I had to be part of it. Yeah.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because there's actually right now in our NDIS sector, it's like a forgotten generation that there were people that were actually lived in institutions that now are not living in institutions. That's because they are living in different sorts of accommodation. Can you give us a little, like, an insight what it was like? Because a lot of us talk about the NDIS, but it's only 10 years old and
Yeah.
there was more to it.
It's interesting because when I was doing some reading before I came on to speak to you, and, looking at the social model of disability and looking at Wolfenhauser, who talked about social role valorization and people with a disability being in valued roles. And I look at right now, people in Parliament. I look at with, people with a disability in Parliament running organisations. And I was reading it going, hang on, that actually is happening right now, 30 years later, but it's happening right now. That I want to park that for a second. If we go back to what the institutions were like, there was no individualised clothes. There was one toothbrush for 40 people. There was a bucket of clothes where you went and got your jocks, your socks, your tracky dacks, and your tracky top. There was no choice and control. There were relationships that formed within the institutions that when they deinstitutionalised, they got very wrong by separating people. That was not great. But I was on the other flip side, that I was then working with people who had moved out of the institution but were teaching and showing and saying, this is now where you live, this is your room, this is your property, this is, you're going to the day placement, or you're doing work that you want to do. I think people thought once you move people out of the institution that all of a sudden they'd be able to make decisions, and that part of my job was to assist people in decision making, but also giving. It wasn't just choose spaghetti or steak for dinner. We're talking about life decisions, and we had to start really small to then build, and that's what my training was in the Cert 4. That's what it was around writing up programs. All of that has been lost. All of the history of disability and people not understanding where we've come from and where we currently are. And I probably am known for my mouth and the fact that I will not allow people to forget history. Because if you forget history, then you can say that never happened, and that there's got to be a measurement. And that measurement for me is, I also, in the times of the institution, fast forwarding before the NDIS rolled into the north of Melbourne, I was running the old system in state government. So you've got somebody, and really myself, 30 years of disability from where it was to where it currently is. And we've done some great work moving forward, but we've also stepped really away at times, I think, around the whole foundation of what field of work we work in and what underpins that. And I would say only 25% of services out there actually understand what underpins the work that we do. And why people with disability are the forefront of everything they should be leading as well.
Yeah, it's been a couple of times, and I had conversations reminding, well, hold on one moment. We've come this far, and then there's times when I've talked to providers going, that looks very familiar. It's not an area that I wish to engage in because it does look like it's a turn in the wrong direction. Because I
Yeah.
come from a groups background, so skill
Yes.
building is incredibly important, and people being involved and having decisions of their own is incredibly important. So as we are working toward this in the NDIS, I feel like sometimes we miss that because it's kind of new and fresh, and
Mm.
the history, like you said, can be easily lost. And it'd be a shame to lose that because there had been some people that we have served that had some really terrible shit. I'll just call it some
Yeah.
terrible shit happen, and have lived now a life that is more like that they deserve and should have.
Yes.
It's hard to watch.
It's very hard to watch, and I think that we throw this banter around of choice and control, and I like to say will and preference now just to be different, which is which is under the guardianship VCAT sort of thing, will and preference. But I find it incredibly challenging when I'm told that somebody can't make decisions and they're non-verbal or what have you. And I find that highly insulting because I work with many people, and I've got one participant in particular who is in a house and wants to move, but because he is non-verbal, they would say, and I would say he's very verbal actually. He's actually a great communicator if you listen properly and follow the gestures and understand who he is. And they're stating that he needs a guardian to make decisions for him when he's made it very clear he wants to move. When I'm fighting and battling that situation, I think, how am I here after 30 years in the industry that I'm still dealing with these new providers who say, no, he's got no choice and control and he can't make his own decisions. And I've known this man for 20 years prior to him even living. I actually knew him prior to him living in his own home. So I think in that way that we are going backwards, because that is not true. And I think it's quite an insult to him. His intelligence, because he's got a degenerative illness, doesn't mean he doesn't know what he wants. And he's been very clear. When he told me to move him out of a nursing home, I had that done within 7 days very quickly. He was at, you move me now to where now, So I guess what I'm saying is that new providers or people who don't actually want to acknowledge or understand somebody with a neurological condition is now keeping him prisoner. And the NDIS Commission knows about it. The VCAT, we're waiting for a hearing. We've done everything we possibly can. And it's not often that Belinda Toohey gets to sit on her hands, but in this case, I have tried everything. And I think that in a different world, 20 years ago, I don't even think this would be happening then, but it is now. And I think it's because of new providers not understanding legislation, not understanding policies and procedures, not understanding human rights, the ethics, the you name it, they're not understanding it.
Thought was interesting when it came to talking to new provider support workers. We never had to wait. Like, I was talking to somebody, I never waited for a speechy for a communication aid. We just built it because it needed to happen, and you just do it because that's what was required. The idea of stop starting for another person when really we could just get the job done. Like, you don't have to wait as long if you just ask the question and go through it. That's what I find probably the most alarming when it comes to support workers, that not willingness to be curious to fix a problem when you see it, wait for another. Yeah,
That we're the old school support workers when we saw our job as assisting and supporting, not doing and taking over.
yeah,
And that's the difference.
yeah.
if we write up I remember writing up a program to teach a young lady how to make cheese and baked bean sandwiches every Saturday. And we did it with prompt, no prompt direction, and you're assisting and moving along each time that person gained those skills, They're not around anymore. So how do you measure success? Oh, we just showed them how to do it and it's done. But we actually know that the best way to teach is by repetition with very clear steps and, going over. And I believe all of that is lost. Christine Bigby, who is the professor out at La Trobe Uni, who I just adore the work that she does, she's reintroducing, she's talking about this all the time, active support, skill development, the work that she's teaching, support workers and other agencies. And I just want to say, just show them how to, do their own program and implement that for that person and go through it. I guarantee you that it'll work, but it just seems to all have sort of been lost. And when you know that it works as well as I know that it works, because I did it, I'm a little bit sad that whole function of support work has gone. And that is very sad.
I agree with you because I've made that many social stories. It's not funny.
Yeah.
And then the idea of, it's a problem. Let's make a social story. Let's work on it together. Let's talk about it together. And at the end of the time, by the time you get to the end of the social story and you no longer need it, that person's really proud that they got to that point. And that point looks completely different to everybody. But the fact that there's pride there that, yeah, I made it, watch me. And then they pull out their social story and talk about it with other people. There's a lot of pride there to be able to be as independent as possible. I find that wildly crazy, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I feel like support work is more, it feels at times more medical than what it should be, where it should be more hands-on. Yeah. I don't know. I couldn't tell you, but I think it's also the amount, how quickly we had to grow with the NDIS to get support workers up and running to be able to cater to the amount of support that people needed. I think that critical time, definitely there was a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in that,
and still is.
and it will continue to be a problem. Yeah. Until we actually address the core of it. And then what is a support worker to its core? So before all of this, you worked in DHSS? Or they've had multiple name changes. You've done teaching. Then in between that, you thought, I wouldn't mind being a director and including you. How did you come up with this name?
It wasn't myself who came up with the name, actually. It was my husband, Dominic Nadalin, who came up with that name. He was the brave one in talking about, because what had happened was I was managing the old individual support program area right up to, so I was doing the Northwest right up to Mildura, and Dom and his brother had already created a website and, had put including you on there, and I'm just like, oh, I'm not sure. And then I took some time off to get my first child, Jessica, into primary school, and we got our first referral. And in actual fact, he'll kill me for telling this story, but Dom is very different to me. He's quite introverted, but I had to send him out to do a presentation to an agency. And from that one presentation that he was so upset that I made him go to, we got our first service user. And that first service user was at our 10th birthday in March this year. And we celebrate her every year for getting Including You started. And she's very much loving her position as the first person at Including You, and was cutting the cake with us and is always celebrated. So all of that, Dom named the company and Dom got the first person who came on board. So, and he loves that because he refuses to go out and speak ever. That's my job now. Yeah. And then I left the department after that. Yeah.
So does Dom work in disability as well? Is that okay, you met? Sorry, I'm so noisy.
So Dom came into disability, I think, like 20 years ago. When he came in, I was actually working in child protection. So there was no, coming because I'm doing this work. I was completely out on a secondment. He came in after running his own mechanic business with his dad for, I think, about 15 years. they were winding the business down, and he came into disability and got his Cert 4 and Cert 6 in the first 6 months. And I must say he's a much better practitioner than I am. He worked with young men with what we would label, challenging behaviours, and spent quite a number of years in that space. So he's quite well, between us, we've got about 50 years of experience, and he's the back of the business. He does all the finances and invoicing, and he's a bit, but yeah, he's behind the scenes. And then you've got me, who's the front of including you, and my name, basically. Yeah, that's all we had.
Pretty impressive to start with one person and grow it and expand it, because as you've been able to grow and expand, you've been able to take on more support coordinators as time
Correct.
progressed. So how long
Yes.
did it take you to get your very first person to work for you? You and Dom,
My
sorry.
goodness.
The silent pile.
I can tell you that we started off with support workers first, and this is a pretty interesting story. One of our first support workers was actually my house supervisor when we moved the guys out of Janefield. So
Yep.
Liz and I met, I think, a month after we started, and she was looking for work, and I said, well, you don't have to. You're gonna be a support worker for me, and including you. And again, she just celebrated her 10 years with the company. And she was really pivotal in my teaching back in the houses, and taught me about integrity and values, and how to support people coming out of an institution, but also not taking away from them their experience, because it wasn't all bad in the institute. And Liz worked in that institution, but she was really pivotal in my 20s and my time in the houses. And so she's now was our first support worker. And I then also went and partnered with Kangan TAFE. So Channing was one of the lecturers. Actually, she was Dominic's lecturer, actually. And she was quite a great ally to have. So I was going out to do presentations to the Cert 4s at Broadmeadows TAFE, and then we advertised. So we had a slow pool of staff coming on as we were getting more direct supports. I was doing case management until the NDIS rolled in, and then I was the original support coordinator. And we didn't have anyone in that posse for, I think, nearly 2 years. For 2 years, it was Dominic, myself, and a handful of direct support staff. And I say his mum because she was a babysitter. We had a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. So we worked around shifts and what have you with his mum as well. So, we started the company with 2 small babies, and including you being the third. Yeah.
So do you have any really big visions for the future for including you?
It's interesting because I was thinking about that, and, the big vision is always to keep quality of supports high. And, we've just opened short-term accommodation out in Fawkner, which is something that Dom has been going on at me about forever and a day. And I didn't want to do SIL. I didn't want to do overnight support. So I've got to be very honest and say, after my time in accommodation in group homes and what have you, I saw too much violence and too much, and I mean staff, so standing staff down for disgusting things. But we built a house in James Street, and that opened 4 weeks ago, and we've had a few service users come through. And it's funny, because I managed respite, children and adults respite in my career, but it's always a bit nerve-wracking. So we started that, and we've actually got an allied health manager on board now. So we're registered for that, and we're going to continue. So we've got an occupational therapist, we're looking for a behaviour therapist and speeches. And again, has to have the ethos that we do around human rights, ethics, quality, and we continue to grow in the support coordination space. So I was in Queensland last week with our new support coordinator based out in Brisbane, Ipswich, and we've got someone on the Sunshine Coast and someone in Canberra. And when I say somebody, so I've got to be very honest with you that it's not me going, right, we're going to advertise for somebody up in Queensland. It's actually my staff who've gone, right, I'm leaving Melbourne. I'm moving to Queensland. Do you want me to open up including you up there? And I'm like, yep, I do, because I actually trust you and I know you.
Yep.
And then we've got direct supports here. And I won't do direct supports anywhere else because I've got to have absolute oversight of direct supports. And that's got to be Melbourne. So the big vision is, sorry.
No. I You've said a lot of things that I agree with, and I just need to circle back because there's this lie
Okay,
in our
tell me.
sector. You ready for the lie that I keep hearing? Is that when
Mhm.
it comes to entering this sector, the best way to enter is SEALs, and I will say no. And the reason why I say no to SEALs is because it has to be done really well. It cannot be just you jump into a SEAL and think that it's okay. I've always advocated the fact that if you're going to start in this sector, start with 2 hours, do the 2 hours supporting that person really, really well to the point that you get a really good brand from it and people will recommend you, and then grow yourself out slowly, not just to jump in, because I have have a distaste when it comes to picking SEALs as a priority because you can do one-to-ones really well. You can do short or com really well. You can do the one-to-ones in homes, in groups. You can do all those things really well. It's not just one element because I'm gonna Sarah. I believe
Say it.
in the next couple of years, we're going to see some interesting findings in SEAL houses when it comes to the people that we serve, speaking up and advocating that it isn't all sunshines and lollipops. It isn't that easy. And I believe it will take an incident for it to occur. And it's just a matter of time.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think it is a very dangerous area that we are getting people in as a cash cow. And I see this all the time as you would. And it actually does make me sick, to be honest. I'm very nervous about that. And I agree with you. I think it's going to take a massive incident for this to be really looked at. And I actually think too the NDIS aren't silly about this either. And
Mm.
that's why they're registering and why they're doing what they're doing. I actually think SIL providers should be very worried if they're not providing quality supports, and if they're not doing what they should be doing, they will be exposed. And
100%.
usually that's yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Because yeah, it and they should be worried because at the end of the day, it's not, it's like, even if I put this back right and you go back to institution days, what happened at Kew Cottages with the massive fire and everything changed. It was like, right, now cut shit, done. We're going to fix what we're doing currently because what we're doing is wrong. It's affecting people's livelihoods. Same thing, something like that. I honestly and strongly believe something will happen. And it's a matter of time. I know I'm having really big statements on this podcast, but I do. And I think I do feel it, and I do see it, and I do worry about it.
Yep.
Yep. How does it make you feel when people with disabilities feel truly included?
How does it
As a support coordinator, as a service provider for supports, how does, like, I know for me, when I see really good support, you can't say anything because you don't want to look daggy as hell yet. But then you've got like
I
this
know.
smirk and this smile, and you can just see it. And there's nothing I think warms my heart more than when you're out and about in the community and you cannot tell that that person's your support worker. It's just two people having coffee, two people doing shopping, and you only know this because you know that person is a support worker and all that stuff. The ability to be able to blend in a way that is not obvious.
Yep. It's interesting. I live out in the north, and my services are out in the north, and I'm a bit of a shopper, and I often will come across support workers. I remember one day I was at this coffee shop and I saw one of my support staff with one of our service users. My first reaction was to go, "Hi, how are you?" But I stopped, and I stopped myself because when I looked, they looked like two mates going for a walk and chatting to each other, and it actually made me cry. And I spoke to my staff, and I said, we need to send him a voucher for doing his job, which was assisting somebody in the community, not walking in front of him, not walking behind him, not on the phone. It was two guys hanging out at a shopping centre. And if that's what you're talking about, that was pretty amazing for me. And I did cry because I went, oh my God, if I could clone that. Something as simple as that is really worth it. It's worth everything that we do. And I don't see enough of it because, as you know, we've got support workers out there on their phones with their things in their ears,
Yes.
engaged. And we all see that, my children constantly tell me to stop eyeballing people when I'm out because I'm making sure they're uncomfortable when I'm watching. I can't help myself. But, I'll give you another example of true inclusion. I supported a lady who was in a group home when I first started including. I've known her for like 30 years. I remember when she first came into the service and she had this almighty reputation. Anyway, she came over to us through the case manager and she was moved out of a group home and she went into social housing. And she lives in a particular suburb and everybody knows her. Everybody knows her. She's very well known in the fact. So if you are going on shift and she's not home, you might walk down the street and the chemist will go, I saw her 20 minutes ago at the post office. You'll go to the post, no, I saw her next door grabbing a coffee. They actually know who she is. They actually know that who the particular worker is because she's consistently with her. They've got my number and so does a shopping centre. And so when we talk about community, she's truly accepted. She is not watched. People just know who she is and where she is, and she waves. And, for me, that speaks volumes around who they know, how at times, because she can be a bit tricky in how to sort of manage her at times. But they know her and they respect her and they say hello and she comes in and they have a chit chat. And for me, that is about true inclusion because she's actually valued. She actually helps the LD people gather the trolleys, and they've just worked out now. She goes and does it. She brings it in. They say, "Thank you so much. We really, and they've tried. They're looking to get her a job there. She does it at Coles as well. And so it's that acceptance that she's assisting and that she's looked after. She wouldn't have got that in the group home she was at because she lived in a group and she hated it. And the night that she moved out into this apartment, I bought her. We had a pizza on the floor, as you do when you move in, waiting for your furniture to roll up. And she said to me, "Belinda, I'm not in jail anymore. I'd actually like to have a dose set instead of a Webster pack." And I said, "You know what, sweetheart? You can have whatever you like as long as you take your medication." And she marched down there the next day and the chemist called me. They said, "Oh, so-and-so wants to come off the..." I go, "She can. It's actually her right. She does not want her medication administered like that." But, "Oh, yeah, no worries. That's fine. Not an issue." Never heard from them again. Talk about inclusion. To me, that's a pretty good news story. And she's hitting 11 years now in that
Yep.
community and still valued.
This is the part we
And
forget. We
yeah,
completely forget this part.
completely.
There's been times that I have been a support worker and I'll be out and about and you're like, who is this famous person I am supporting? Because they know everybody. And then you
Everybody.
walk down the street and they're saying hello to 10 people and you're like, who am I with? Like, how do you
Yeah,
know all these people? And that's because they've developed their community around them. And then the community around is actually the eyes on you now to perform as a
that's
support
right.
worker to do the very
That's
best
right.
as possible
Yep,
because they are known. They are famous within their own community.
completely. Complete.
So as time has progressed and it's getting really quite difficult, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges you see services facing right now?
Look, some of the biggest challenges, let me think. Look, I certainly think the pricing within the NDIS is certainly a big issue. And I think the NDIS are floating without a rudder. They just are. Um, I think that that companies who are providing supports, I really hope that they're doing their accounts properly and working out what they've got and what's their buffer, what isn't. That if they're going to fold, they do it in a way that's not going to be closing the door the next day. I think that there is concerns around the quality of supports that people are getting. I think that the fraud that is going on is completely out of hand. I think that we are focusing far too much in the media on the negative. I say that having been featured a few times in papers this year. I would really love to be able to do a good news story as well, but we know how the media like to jump on that bandwagon and make people with a disability feel guilty for having a disability and having to be funded to do that. I just think that is so ridiculously wrong. I think that there's lots of good people out in the sector trying to do their best. I think that our service users, and I say this with the utmost respect, you know, there were original plans for the NDIS when it started, and I was really, really excited about having supports and accommodation separated. I was really excited about that. I was really excited for young people coming out of nursing homes. I was really excited for all the good that was going to come with the NDIS, and I think that that's been lost a little bit because of how fractured, I guess, and how everything was given over to the Commonwealth by the states and the funding, and now they're wanting to return, but without any money. And so I would be saying to any provider, they should be watching and reading and being as skilled up as possible in understanding what the next 2 to 3 years look like. It's not going to get any easier. They've introduced certain parts, like the funding, pay periods and registration to curb some of the fraudulent stuff going on. Great, absolutely needed, but none of that is new to us. To those who've been around for a very long time, we knew this stuff was going to happen prior to the NDIS rolling out. We had it in the state. We were trying to say you need to have some scaffolding around all of this for protection and whatever else. And I guess that wasn't adhered to. And then I find myself, and including you, in the big part of the fraud stuff and being completely in the middle of it. So I guess I worry about that for some agencies that aren't as savvy and clever as well with detecting this. I think that we're losing skilled practitioners and skilled allied health and skilled direct support workers are leaving because they're not feeling satisfied and fulfilled in the role that they're doing, even though they can be unbelievably great. They just find the pressure too much. And there's a lot of misinformation out there as well. So I think that you have to be able to educate yourself and be on, things like LinkedIn, making sure that you're getting all the right information. Don't wait for your company to give it to you. Get out there and do it yourself so so you're empowered to make decisions, but also explaining that to the people who you serve at the same time as well. I think that's really important for them to understand, because I think that's fear mongering and what have you really affects the people we serve, and it's up to us to be able to give them the right information or send them in the right way. So I think there's some of the things that I'm worried about in the future, and I think that we can't forget that people are people and not numbers, and I'm hearing a lot of that lately. Commodities being moved. I'll do this if you give me this, and I don't know.
Yeah, I was like, I get you, because sometimes I was like, I didn't know I was trading Pokemon cards. Like, I thought we were working towards making sure that people got what they wanted. And then when I say that, I'm all for people choose it, choice over anything when it comes to the type of supports, and the idea that you're only offered one support or company and not a multiple. I find that hard. I do find that hard because it means we're limiting somebody's choice to access information to get to who's actually going to be the best provider and be the best person on shift for that person. I find that stuff hard. But also, as there has been a lot of spotlight around support coordination lately, and it looks like it's getting harder and harder to be a support coordinator, which Linda, I'm going to break rank here and say I'm actually okay with some support coordinators leaving. I'm going to say it.
Me too.
Yeah, I am. And I know it is harder, but it's not meant to be an easy job. This isn't meant to be a walk in the park. There are parts of this job that do challenge us, and it should challenge us because we should aim to be higher than where we were before. So yeah, there is a push to get rid of some support coordinators, and I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with that as well.
Yeah.
And I can tell what I've realised working in 3 states, so working in Melbourne, Canberra, and Queensland. There's different interpretations of things, completely different interpretations, and I think that's been quite a shock for me that I didn't realise that Victoria viewed something differently to Canberra and to Queensland. I think that that's been quite a shock. There are some really shonky providers out there. There is. Support coordination would be one of the hardest jobs I've ever done. And I was running departments and areas from afar, and that was much easier than doing support coordination. And I think that was probably a bit of a shock for me. I had the luxury of being able to make the mistakes. I had the luxury of being able to stuff up and not, go, oh, Kaylee, I sort of know about that, but I've told the service user we're going to try this, and so I've had that the luxury to do that and to get things wrong and to get things right. And that's why we train all of our support coordinators in-house, because we want them to be at a level 3, because I don't know what it means to be a level 2. But a good support coordinator is around the support that we give the people that we serve and working within our limits and understanding we're not crisis response. Geez, that took me a long time to work that out. Do you know how long Dominic banged on about that to me for such long? We are not crisis. And the day that I got that was the day that I was free. And I went, right, that actually isn't. We try to circumvent it, but we aren't a crisis service per se. And I think that when that happened, there was a turnaround, and I was able to start, recruiting some people into the company who became quality support coordinators. I even had a phone call today from a lady who decided to do her handover with a service user who'd come to us with the NDIS directly and not my level 3, because a level 2 she believes it coercive. Like, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So I actually just went, okay, yep, thanks. Wow is all I can say. 10 years
Yeah.
in, and I still get a wow phone call, and I'm just thinking, so we're going to get a handover from the NDIS around this person, but you could have just rung me as a director and I could have taken that handover. It just didn't make sense. And I guess that's about practice. My support coordinators would never have done that, ever. That is not the way that you do business. And I think that that's how we probably at times get into trouble with other providers. But we're also 20 support coordinators in 4 regional managers in 3 states. So we've got to be doing something right.
It is about that accountability and the expectation, because I'm going to tell the audience something that you and I have worked together more than once. And no, I'm not a support coordinator, to be fair.
Yes.
I've had you as a teacher, and I've also had you when I was in provider land working with a provider on, both ways. And I will say that I think when a support coordinator, and this is what I got from the group, is that there is an expectation as a provider to meet that person's expectations in support, but also making sure that there was enough information both ways, that we were working collaboratively together. And I've always felt like I've got that from your team, and that's very
Yes.
hard. It's very hard sometimes to get in contact with some support coordinators.
Completely. I agree with you. And I think you're spot on. It's about that collaboration for the people that we serve. And when that's not forthcoming, that actually affects them, the
Yep.
people that we serve. Nobody else, it affects them.
But it's a whole life approach. So as a provider, we do one
Yeah.
element. And then you've got the
Yep.
support coordinator, you've got their
Yeah.
families, you've got their friends, you've got everything involved. How do we all come together to make sure that this person has a life that is of quality, but also just an ordinary life like you and I? That is
Yeah.
the $1 million question. How to do it well?
Yes, it is.
I
Yep.
think we're always working on it. So I'm going to go.
Absolutely.
I'm going to go back
Tell
in
me.
time a little. You were my
God.
old teacher. You were
Oh my.
my old tape teacher. What did you enjoy most about teaching? It's so funny when I tell people this, because I remember going to an event going, "Oh, that's Belinda.
My
That was my
God.
tape teacher." So if I stuffed
Oh
anything
my
up, please blame Belinda.
My goodness. It's really funny because when I think about teaching, I need to preface it by saying that I had a 4-month-old baby, which is now 15. She's now 15, Jess. And I was going a bit stir crazy, and at home having managed, a very hectic, difficult department or whatever else, and then having this little baby. He was so delicious, but there was something that was unsettling, and I was told, why don't you work one day a week? And I went, I could teach. And I sent off my CV to Vic Uni, and I think I was called 3 days later and offered my first teaching job with Certificate 4. This is before your time, Sarah, on a Tuesday. And I loved it. Oh my God, I loved it. It was exactly what I needed. Just one day a week where I was teaching Cert 4. I was in the lab, so I was teaching, how to use hoists and, talking about social role valorization. I was introducing things that were sort of out of the curriculum, but I didn't know how not to introduce all of that. So that was great. Then in between the babies, I then taught you was it a Wednesday night? I think it was.
Yep.
and I was teaching Certificate 6, and I remember we were doing leadership. Funny enough, you're gonna find this interesting. Having dyslexia and now realizing ADHD as well, to prepare for a class, I had so many ideas of what I was going to introduce and talk about. And, what I had 3 hours to teach, I probably had prepared 10 hours of material. But I loved being able to do that part of the teaching. I enjoyed the disability side of it, the leadership side of it very much. It really questioned how I viewed leadership, how I managed as a manager, what I wanted to impart to all of you around what it is to be a good leader in the disability field. And hoping that I had also put in there around ethics and human rights and the way that we treat, the people we serve. And I'm pretty sure around that same time, the incident with Urella happened, where there some young women who were sexually assaulted by a support worker, and I'm pretty sure that he was charged. And we were all, pretty very sad that it occurred, but we talked about, how huge this was, that these ladies reported what he had done and the police had taken it seriously, and he was charged and going to go to court for that. I remember preparing for that class, and I couldn't wait to get in there to tell you all that. Have you read the paper? Have you seen it? Because people with a disability had not been believed, or they were not great witnesses to their own crimes. And that was the stuff that I enjoyed teaching more than anything. Like, look how far we've come. This is an unbelievable outcome. Now we just have to make sure, that he's convicted of what he did to those women. And he was actually, in the end, I think he was given a very heavy penalty of maybe 18 years for the sexual assault of those women. And I find that to be quite a profound experience, to be able to share that in a classroom, and hoping that I've at least penetrated that, your guys thinking about, if 2 of you out of the 10, then I've done an all right job. I love that part of it. What part I didn't love about the teaching, and it's my own karma, I tell you, when I started including you as a little bit of a backup, I went back and taught, and I was given research. Now, when I was studying, research was my worst subject, and I probably got in trouble quite a few times for being disruptive as an adult student. And here I was teaching research. Yeah, that was 6 months of me teaching something that I didn't really enjoy, but I enjoyed teaching the students. And so, when I stopped teaching, I was like, yep, I'm done. But what I realise now is that once a teacher, always a teacher. And I reckon my staff, my managers, I drive them crazy with information and sending stuff and teaching and saying the same things over and over, because it's innate in me. It's what
Yeah.
I am. Yeah.
Funny enough, my time learning through my TAFE period, you were the only teacher's name I could remember. I'm being serious. You're the only one I could remember, but I think it was because I like a good debate. I do. I enjoy back and forth, because I believe that having a debate and a discussion and to talk about it in a way that, everyone could understand and pull apart. I love that. But now that I know you much better than ever before, it could be that element, maybe just dyslexia. Like, we do love teaching. We do love informing. We like pulling
Yep.
apart problems. I know there's a full thing to it. And it's quite funny, because you think that when you think of dyslexia, the last place you'd want to be is in a room teaching. How do you explain big or tricky ideas to your students in a way that they can best understand?
Look, most depends how people learn. I'm very much, you're talking to me, and I know that we will read a manual, be the last thing that I'll do. I try and work it out, especially with the people who are in my teams. I make it my business to see how they learn. Some are really good with going away and doing that. Some are really good with the explanation from me. I know that I can be very distracting, because I'm always talking with my hands. And so for some people, it's too much. I'm too much. So, and it is about breaking that down. It's around breaking down and I'm always watching to see how they're processing it as well. So I'm always watching and observing when I'm talking to make sure somebody's getting it. Or I'll say, "Do you need me to shut up for 10 minutes?" And then you come back and we'll talk about it again. Yep, that's cool. So that's how I'm always watching. I'm always breaking it down. I'm always inviting conversation back as well. Sometimes I think as I'm getting older and you learn more about how you learn and who you're working with, that also allows some space in between the processing. 'Cause when you're managing in crisis, you process really, really fast. It's like really, really quick all the time. But
Yeah.
then when you become a director and you're not processing that quick, you have to find ways of being able to process it and all of it. So missing of details, I've got to go back for. I'm really aware. As an example, there's something going on with the NDIS portal and RAMs and whatever. I know that is not my strong suit, so I've got to ring that 1300 number every single time. So I make sure that I'm on my own. I've got half an hour to an hour. No one's going to ring me, so I can just get that sorted. I know that's how the best way that is for me. So I have really learned how to be able to master some of that stuff. I also know that can really be triggering if I'm being pressured to do that stuff. So it's about really honing in on what you know you can do well, honing in on the environment that you need to be in to do certain tasks. And I've also got two little I've got no, they're not little, but two teenage girls, and my older one has dyslexia and she kills me for it. But I put in my email, if you see any emails to me at the bottom, it will say, "This has been written by a dyslexic person. If
Yeah.
you do not understand, please give me a call." And I did that because my daughter was embarrassed that she had dyslexia. I go, "I'm not embarrassed." She goes, "Oh my God, don't." And then I said to her, "No, I'm not." And then I put it under the bottom of my email, and I showed her. And now when I'm gonna speak about her dyslexia, I ask her, "Am I allowed to talk about that?" Because it's her story. She's allowed me to tell it. But what I've learned from her, she has dyslexia, but she doesn't have the trauma history in childhood that I do. So I had that compounded. So her dyslexia looks so different to mine. And she's teaching me what that looks like without an added component to that dyslexia. So I'm learning all over again what that looks like. And she's so bloody clever and doesn't even realize it, how she manages it, what she does, the habits that, and I would say none of them are from me. She would say the same thing. None of them are from you. I've just learnt them myself. But I do know that she watches me all the time. All the
Did you
time.
mask it for so long? Like, because you would have had to work from school all the way in accommodation, in DHS, in youth, in child protection. How do you mask that? Because there are elements. Because I know that
Mm,
I did a thing today
mm.
about, if you're having a bad Monday, just remember I've done the following, and then I kept writing them. I was like, "Oh my God, Sarah, how many things did I have before ChatGPT came along? How many
I
mistakes have
know.
I made? And what? How did I get away with it?"
So long. When I think back, I always knew, right? I always knew from very early on that I was going to succeed at something. And when you've got the other side of your brain going, "You silly, you dumb, you stupid, whatever," I was like, "All right, you've got your moment." But it wasn't until I hit higher education and I got that steadfast focus in stuff that I loved
Yeah.
that I was able to probably put more effort. I even went, interestingly, to do a grammar course in my 20s, and I didn't learn a friggin' thing. And I thought something's really not right. But I also learned how to talk. And I knew if I was not a good writer, I had to excel at talking. And that's what I did. And I think that I made friends with people who would be able to help me with the written word. I would take work home and do it at home after hours to perfect things and get Dom to check spelling or pronunciation.
Yeah.
I did all of that sort of stuff. And I think with the the undiagnosed ADHD, I think that's only sort of come up now, and I'm going to say it, due to menopause. Women with who have ADHD, it compounds in this time. And I'm like, wow, that's also there, and I'm waiting for an official diagnosis for that. And again, I've had to work out how to get around that, master that. But Jesus Christ, I sound so intelligent now with Chat GBT. I love myself. I'm like, oh my God, where were you 30 years ago? But I will
Likely.
say, I think that I had managers who saw that I was hardworking. I always went above and beyond. I made sure that I mastered what I knew really well and did really well. So when
Yeah.
my writing wasn't so grand, they would fix it or they would help me out with it. I made it so that was such a little component of who I was. The rest of it was so good that that was overlooked.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And yeah,
I think we make a really good workforce just quietly. My pattern recognition, I'm sorry, I'm going to gloat here, but my pattern recognition is superb. And it's things that I remember we were doing something to with the CRM and I had already picked it up before the CRM. Like, what do you mean? I said, no, it happens every week. This person here, bang, 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 too many kilometers, doesn't make sense. And then like a month later, oh yeah, shit, Sarah,
spot
how
on.
did you pick that? Like, oh God, because it ticks. And I know that I'm not sure about you, but like I know we talk and sometimes we glossify dyslexia about your superpowers and all that stuff. Do you believe that there's an element that gives you an advantage compared to, say, your competitors
Yep,
in this sector?
absolutely.
What's your advantage?
That I have a super memory.
Oh,
I I I have a super memory. I can visualize and understand policies and procedures legislation. I can manage in high crisis situations, and I mean high crisis. And I've had some pretty horrific things happen in my career, to deaths, staff who have passed away and being in critical incidents, to I was part of the recovery for Black Saturday, and I was awarded a medal from the Queen for the National Recovery Medal, and that was pretty huge for a girl who, you know, um, has struggled academically, and even then I didn't even really understand what I had, you know what I mean, or why I was able to, be part of the relief effort and coordinate with the police and the fire and, the communities, and being able to do all of that. I was able to do that with my eyes closed. So that's sort of part of my history and job is because of that stuff. Like, I have a very, very high threshold for really critical incidents. And I'm not going to lie, getting that medal was an absolute shock. And I thought it was a prank when it first came out, but it was also, um, 3 years after the fires, and I was completely surprised and chuffed at the same time, because my background is English, and my grandmother, who came out here as a what do they call them? A tube bob com, was incredibly proud that her granddaughter received such a medal, and I don't know if I would have been able to do that if I didn't have, that high threshold. And I believe that all of that, working in forensic and in child protection and working as a support worker on the ground with really complex individuals. And I think that's why, at Including You, we do work with the most complex, because I have trained and I have people who are so good at what they do that they are able to manage under those really difficult situations, where I sort of sit back now and I'm pretty proud of them. And that comes from having my experiences about putting all of my skills that I think are rare at times, to be able to manage what I've managed. So I think that's certainly been an absolute benefit, dyslexia and the ADHD and life experience overall.
do you find
Yeah.
that you read people, for your ability to read people when you meet them?
Yeah. And I'm an eternal optimist. John he would say to you that I am the most optimistic person there is. And I tend to not pick up on, people's not being genuine, but I can also pick people's behavior. I think I pick people's behavior pretty well, and pick individuals. Yep. I reckon I'm pretty good at it. John's
Do you
good,
think
but I reckon I'm better.
do you think it's a mix of, because you've worked in disability, so we had to always look for people's verbal cues
Oh,
and
yep.
signs and all that stuff, and I'm forever, every now and again, I get told there was no cue, there was no trigger. I'm like, yes, there was.
Oh,
Yes,
there
it was.
was.
You didn't see it or you didn't see it. And then they're like, "How can you pick that?" I was like, "Because I think for a period of time, like you said, because where you lack in one area, you expand in another. And to be able to communicate and read body language is, I believe in this day and age, incredibly important. It's always, I don't know, I've always had a gut feeling about certain things that didn't fit or sit right.
Yeah. It's when we mess with our brain instead of following our gut that I mess it up.
Yeah.
I think, we have worked really with some early on, we worked and did some really difficult service users with some challenges. And you have to, and I'd train staff on the ground and I'd be able to pick 2, 3 seconds before something was going to happen. It was going to happen because I saw a twitch of an eye or I
Yep.
saw a flick of a hair. I'll go
Yep.
move back, and then run. And that's what you're talking about. It's about being able to pick when that's going to occur. So when people say to me, there was no trigger, oh my God, there was a trigger, you missed it.
Yep.
You're not thinking properly. You're not picking up on it. Like if I'm walking in somewhere and my gut and my chest is off, then I'm out. Something's not right. You're not okay. Yeah, it absolutely is what we were trained to do in disability, but we have a more focused lens, Sarah, because we can't just focus on the words. We're focusing on all of what's going on. And I think that is a lost art and skill.
Yeah, body language 100% because there's times that I've had friends walk in, like, they'll start their day and I'm like, "Oh, what's wrong?" Like, "How did you know something was wrong?" I said, "The way you carried
Mm,
yourself in the room, I saw you walked in." Like, "Was it that obvious? I was trying really hard." I said, "No, you're slumping your shoulders. You made a big heart before you got in. But you don't normally do that." And that's pattern recognition, body, interpreting body language because, maybe I'm always will be a support worker at heart. I look
me
for
too.
them. I always look for them. And then always. And I feel like at times we need to go back to the core of being a support worker because support worker, we always assess the situation that we're in to make sure that we got, the best quality care possible when we're providing care for this individual. So being that support worker, able to do these things and see these cues,
Mm,
more of that.
yeah. Do you carry that out into your personal life as well when you're out at shopping centres or
Oh yeah.
you're out and about? And yet, because I don't know how to switch that off. I'm always aware of my surrounds and who's around, and yeah, it's certainly a skill that you keep.
Yep, and then for one thing, I've got so like I'll be like the football is a great example. I'll be in a crowd like
Mm.
you, why you? There's something there. Hold on, just watch this. I can see this. I can feel this. It's insane that type of stuff. But do you think that being a dyslexic has made you being able to problem solve when it came to your business and thrive to be the entrepreneur that you are today?
God, when you say entrepreneur, I don't even see myself as that. It's really interesting. But I would definitely say that one of the things with dyslexia is that you just have to be brave. And being brave means that you push on through. And I think that starting including you and working with Dominic and doing the really hard yards, being able to have a high level of coping mechanisms and stress and being able to work things out, the bigger picture situation. So I see something tiny, but I'm trying to circumvent the bigger picture that's going to come if we don't sort out the little bits. That's the stuff that I'm really good at.
Yeah.
And that I'm able to say, if we don't follow step A and B, we're going to end up in D, E, and F, and that's what we're trying to avoid. In care team meetings and things like that, I'm able to share that information and say, if this doesn't happen, we're going to end up here. And I've gotten much better as time goes on. And sometimes we withdraw for supports if I'm like, you know what, it's just going to be too much. We can't actually do that. As an entrepreneur going forward, Dominic and I took 10 years of direct supports and support coordination. And we kept to that original recipe because every single time that we deviated off that recipe in that time, it never eventuated. So we probably made a decision to stop and not do anything else and just focus in on those two areas. And I think that took us maybe 6 to 7 years to work that out. So a few failed attempts at trying to do some other stuff. I think that we were able to master what sort of staff we wanted and who we were looking for in the support coordination area. And we got it wrong a lot of times, probably around year 7, we started to really pick up those who we wanted to, to be long term and including you. And they're now my regional managers. So, overseeing support coordinators. So I do think that skill and the ADHD and my past experiences and the education all rolled into one. And certainly the level of determination and persistence is also one of those skills that you have when you are challenged
Yep.
by having dyslexia or ADHD. You just keep pushing through. And now, 10 years on, we've started two more things. We seem to do it in twos, and I'm all good with that because I like evens, not odds. That's why everything's two. Two, two, two.
Is it because you're okay to fail? Like, because I know for some people, the idea of failing something is so traumatic for them that you fail, you dust yourself off, we start again, and that's just purely from a lifetime of failing things.
Yes, absolutely. I remember when we sat for the first time, I think I cried for 24 hours.
Yeah.
But you know what it is about failing? What was the lesson so you don't actually ever do it again? And
Yep.
I think that's the difference. If you're not reflective and if you're not really true to yourself around what you're good at and what you're not good at, and actually be able to say, I was really shit at that. I did a really shit job and I just need to own it and go, okay, I'm not going to do it that way again. And I think that is really important and is really important in business. And people say you've got this big plan and you've got all these strategic this and that. Well, you know what? We kept coming back to the same recipe. Didn't matter which way we coded it. It came back to the original recipe. Two areas. You can, it's you've got to be able to be really reflective and take the really hard knocks and celebrate the successes as well. It's actually the hardest job in the world, running a business. I said support coordination was, it's running a business is the hardest job in the world. That second.
But one part of me, when it comes to running a business, I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, I don't like, yeah, I, I find it easier because I am creative by nature. So to be able to explore things that I haven't been able to explore because you get held back in other people's businesses, and it gives you the opportunity to do things a little bit differently and explore things you've never explored. If I had a crystal ball and I had it told people 5 years ago that Sarah'd have her own company, she's created an app, I would not believe you. Like, things like that. Like, I find that insane.
I'm incredibly proud of you. You've done such a great job.
Thank you.
You're brave. You've been brave.
It's from life experiences that have got me to where I am today. But in saying that, you've had a business for 10 years, what keeps you so motivated in this space? Because it can be a really hard and difficult and cruel space.
Keeps me motivated. I actually think it comes down to simply that I actually do love people and I actually fascinated and curious. So I've got this curiosity about myself and for others that keeps me motivated. And I love meeting people, but I also love providing really good quality supports and seeing people's lives change. I think starting up doing the short-term accommodation and the allied health, it's all about time. It's timing. And I think after 10 years of mastering, direct supports and support coordination, it's now time to do something else. And we've got the foundation to do that with. And I guess the other thing too is, it's around the growth that you have. Like I am doing, public speaking coaching because I want to be able to master that and be able to do that without having a cry because I get so like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm up here and people are listening to me. It's all that sort of stuff that it's about trying to,
Snagging with you.
I,
How? Sorry.
I don't
Like, because I've seen you
it's
speak multiple
good.
times. I would never in a million years thought that you would need a coach
I
to get you on a
know.
stage. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I find that insane.
And I find that funny because I think that we're always our worst inner critic. And for me, getting a coach is about helping me to sort out the beginning, the middle, and the end, and what I need to do preparing to get on first, like what I have to do prior to the public. There's a whole process, and if I don't know the answers, Sarah, I will go search them out, and that's what I've done in this situation. That's where I want to be able to do that and do that in a way that I get positive feedback in my own head after I finish that, because that can be a real your inner critic is not always right. And I think that's really taught me to be able to seek that out. And so that motivation keeps me going. If I keep pushing myself, I keep pushing, including you, I keep driving and leading the people in my company to do better and to excel and to be proud of themselves. And I want people to be proud of working for a company that represents human rights and ethics, and they actually believe in that as well. And if they don't, well, then they're not working for the right people. And I think that's really important for me as a leader and for somebody who has a huge sense of social justice and has most all of my life. And that doesn't change. That is a steadfast, and even though Dom is also very much like that, and he's the quieter version of me, which is great because we balance each other out. I'm the extrovert, he's the introvert. I'm, the loud mouth, he's the more considered. We make a very good team. And I think that also keeps us going. So if I'm feeling shit one day about stuff, I'm like, oh my God, why am I doing this? He's like, shut up, get on the horse. We're doing what we're doing, and vice versa. So, and not many people get to run a business with the person they're married to. It is very, very tricky and difficult at times, but we've had success for 10 years. So, and we're raising children. So clearly that Belinda Dom match works and it works well. But sometimes there's a lot of suffering that comes with that when we're not agreeing. But all of that drives me, you know what I mean? It drives me. And yeah, it's always for the better, people living a better life. A better life and a more peaceful life is what I think we all want, really.
Where do you see it in 5 years from now?
I hope in 5 years by time that we have an incredible allied health team in Melbourne, maybe even in other states, if I find trustworthy and good people who, want to do that work. I would like to be running the short-term accommodation and having that full and delivering great supports to people, and maybe even having that more geared towards skill development in STA and getting people ready for independent living.
What do you mean?
That would be amazing. That would be amazing. Where else would I like to be? Think that, maybe doing some public speaking and talking more about going back to the social role valorisation, going back to the social model of disability, reminding people and being able to share some of that information in the future, but also not forgetting the past. And maybe, in 5 years' time, maybe I'll be branching out doing something even different. Who knows? I don't have a full stop anywhere. I don't, I don't know if retirement is ever going to be in my plan. I look at Justice of the Peace. I look at doing voluntary work like that. I'm like, maybe I should do something. So I'm always looking, exploring. Curiosity is always there. Want to surround myself with like-minded professionals, which I think I'm building, and people who I respect and understand the language that I speak. Yeah, that's sort of where, a few little things in 5 years is right. I've covered a few things.
Well, I look at it this way. We've survived institutions, we've survived block funding, we're now surviving NDIS. There will be another model coming in the next 10 years that we will survive. And I think the reason why we survive in these models is because the ethics that we have around us of what quality care looks like and what we're willing to not walk past.
You're spot on. That's a very good way of really summing all of that up. And it's very true. And like the NDIS, was revolutionary when it came. I still think it can be, but we're going through some hard times. And you're right. Whatever comes, we will lead that.
Yep.
And lead the people that we serve and our teams to adapt and be flexible. And I think that that's something else we're really good at, Sarah. It's just like it's about being adaptable and flexible and being able to pivot when we need to pivot and adjust, and we're not rigid. And
well, yeah,
that's the big.
When I explain the NDIS to people, especially those that have entered in, I was like, this is what they said in the beginning. And we were like, excellent skill building. Somewhere in the middle, we forgot about skill building and we wanted to keep people other than to teach. And then we're now at that other end going, oh, I think we stuffed up. How do I get this back?
Yes.
We stuffed up. we went a little bit
Yeah,
too far. We didn't put our effort and our time into developing skills for people to be as independent as possible. So what do I do now?
I
That's where
know.
I think
I
it's gone.
agree.
Yeah, because it was
Absolutely.
well, when we were talking about the NDIS and it's the where it's going to be and the feeling about it, it was about giving people more opportunity to have support that have never had it before, but also to skill build to be able to not be on the NDIS. That was the wording, not to be on the NDIS back then. Now I feel
That's
like we're
right.
just trying to rake back what we did a little bit too much of.
Yep. Yes. And really, we were to do ourselves out of a job by, skill building and you know what? In the 10 years, I've only ever had that happen once,
Yeah.
that we did ourselves out of a job. 6 years with a brother and a sister who both were living at home with mum. Both had autism, but also agoraphobia. They couldn't leave the home. We had one support worker going in and other allied health. And 6 years on, they said, right, we actually don't need you anymore. You as a support worker and the agency provided such good support. This young man and woman were then they got a job. They moved out of home. They addressed their mental health. They then were that independent that they sacked us, and it was one of the happiest days I've had at including you.
And it's actually a good thing to be sacked. Like it is a good
I
thing
was
that we got
wrapped.
to that level. I would have been
Yeah,
absolutely yes. Because that's what we were here for to begin with. Because
completely.
we're not meant to be here for a decade or two. We're meant to do our time to get preps people up to be as independent as possible and then move
Yep,
on. For them to
com
experience life like you and I.
yep, and it's only happened once.
Yeah. And that's the icky part, isn't it? Because it should happen more
Yep,
often.
it
But
should
that's
happen
also the
more
key.
often.
Yeah.
Yep, it really like that's for them for the 2 people, and there was a consistency of the support worker as well, but no, it really hasn't happened again, unfortunately.
But the cool part is that you got people out at aged care. I reckon that's something.
Well, you know what's interesting about that? In the old system, I was the one putting people into aged care because there was no other service system.
Oh, no. Well,
So
you
for
went
me,
back up. It's me again.
yep. And now I've had not often in one's career do you get to correct the wrongs. And so for me, young people coming out of nursing homes and hospital discharge into appropriate accommodation has been amazing. I am absolutely committed to that because it used to kill me putting young people in nursing homes because we had no other accommodation around. And look, they started to just before the NDIS. There was the ventilation unit that Urella built, and there was another agency that developed a high dependency, but there still wasn't enough. So it's not very often in one's career that you get to fix up mistakes that were made. You don't often get to do that whole full circle. And so that's been pretty amazing for me to see people and go, right, now you're moving out into your own unit with supports and what. That has been amazing for me. Amazing. And very committed to it. I was very excited, very committed. Went to the Summer Foundation when they started it, that whole policy, and we still even now have some people who still need to be moved out of aged care, and we work alongside the NDIS and the Young People in Nursing Homes initiative to do that as well. So, yeah, I'm pretty proud of the work that we do in that.
Worked alongside your company before when a hospital discharged, and I will say there there is a standard and an expectation to succeed as a provider. So if there's any providers watching this podcast right now and you think it's an easy in, it is not. It is not, and it shouldn't be.
No.
To be fair, it should not. There is things that we need to follow to make sure that people get the transition back to their family homes the best way possible. It's a really good experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I had a great
Yep.
experience. One of your team members, I
I'm
won't
so
name drop.
yes. Well, they're certainly trained and they certainly are supported, and, they're it's a tricky situation, and you've got to be skilled in how you deliver that and get it and get people out as much support as possible. Yeah. Yes. Very proud part of the job as well.
You should be, because there's some really fantastic support coordinators you've got on the books, and not every company gets to say that. So
Ain't that the truth? That ain't that the truth? It's very true.
yeah. Well, That's all the questions that I had for you tonight. Thank you so much for joining this podcast. I'm
No,
thoroughly, every time that I see you, I thoroughly enjoy chatting with you because I love a good
me
debate.
too.
I love a good conversation about topics that aren't easy to talk about.
Oh my God, absolutely. And it's very easy for me and you to talk when our passions align, you know? It's like
Yeah.
the exchange of you know, knowing which is we're very unique. Yeah, we're very unique in the fact that we are very steadfast in who we are and what we believe in, which makes us good leaders and why we own our own company, Sarah.
Yeah.
We keep
Yeah.
doing as well.
It's like seeing a gap and expanding on it, thinking that we can do it better. And I feel like most entrepreneurs, most business owners have a look around and go, but I can do this better. Like I honestly,
Yeah,
I think that's what it is that we're looking around thinking, nah, this is shit. I can fix this and I know how to, and I know where the gaps are, and I'll just go do it.
yeah, yeah,
That's my theory.
absolutely.
But
Yep,
other than that,
I
thank
agree.
you so much for today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No worries.